Hello, and welcome to Tool Time with the Warren County Library. My name is Sandy Roberts, and I'm the Makerspace Coordinator for the Warren County Library System. Normally, you'd find me at Southwest Branch in our Makerspace, teaching classes and helping creators and inventors and builders work on their projects. But right now, with COVID-19, we're not able to be open. So instead, I'm coming to you each week at 5 o'clock on Fridays with Tool Time, because I thought it'd be a great opportunity to share a little bit about what we have available in the Makerspace and through the library system so that you can learn a little bit. That way, when we can open, you can come right back in and start creating. This is the last Tool Time of the summer for our summer reading program, but I will be bringing Tool Time back in the fall, so keep an eye on our schedule for that. If you go to our website at www.warrenlib.org, you can find our full events. So our September and October events are coming up very shortly. You should have those on the calendar by next week. So definitely make sure you take a look. I'll also be adding a tech corner in the fall to talk about some of the more technological items that we offer, like, microcontrollers and things like that. So keep an eye out for that as well. But let's get to our topic for today. Today, we're going to talk about die cutting. And basically, die cutting allows you to take a machine with a die, which has a shaped blade in it, basically. Think cookie cutter, but much, much sharper. And you can put this die on top of the material that you want to cut, usually paper, and the machine applies uniform pressure to that die and presses the blade into the material and cuts out your shape. We use it all the time in scrapbooking. We use it for quilting. You can use it for, vinyl, which is a very popular application. You can use it to make t-shirts, just a ton of different applications for crafting and other fun decor projects. So getting to know how to use die cutters is great. And we have quite a few different types of die cutters available in our Makerspace. So I'm going to talk to you about what we offer. Then we're going to get into some of the specifics about our digital die cutters. And I hope that this gives you some ideas of things that you can create. So why don't we get started? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about die cutters. We'll be talking both about manual craft cutters and heavy-duty cutters, as well as digital or electronic cutters. And they both work a little bit differently, though they accomplish, at the end of the day, the same kind of goal. So really quickly, how do they work? So the idea behind any kind of a cutter is it's basically like a really big, fancy hole punch or craft punch, where you're cutting a shape out of usually paper, but you can be cutting out of foam, fabric, all kinds of different materials. And the material that you can cut varies based on your machine. So generally, you're going to put your material, like your paper, onto the platform of the machine. You're going to place your die over it, and you can see some dies here. You can vaguely see these kind of marks in the foam. That's where the blades are. And here's kind of a sideways where you can have your platform, the material that you're cutting, and then your die, which has blades embedded. So in most of the craft cutters that you can use these days, they have a rubber or a foam that both keeps it from shifting on the material and also protects that blade, keeps that blade kind of hidden and away from your fingers when it's not actually in the machine. So you're going to put the die shape, and each die is for a specific shape. So you're going to put that over your paper, and then you're going to crank a lever, or sometimes you're going to actually do a crank or a lever, whatever your machine has, that you're going to pull, and that's actually going to press the blades of your die into the material and cut and punch out your shape. So that uniform, and the reason that we use a machine is that it keeps the pressure really uniform, so you get a nice even cut. And that's kind of what's really special about using a die cutter and why we like to use them, because it gives you a quick, easy, uniform cut every time you use it. Anyway, so the sharp edges of the die cutter pressed into the paper. When you release the lever, they go back into this rubber material, and you can pull out your shape and end up with your lovely little die shape. So that's the basic premise. So talking about safety, always going to remind you that the most important tool in any makerspace is you. You want to wear your protective gear, stay alert, practice awareness, and always follow your safety rules. Remember that saving a couple minutes of time is not worth a permanent injury or damage to your project. We are using blades here, obviously, so we want to be careful. When you're using a die cutter, make sure your cutter is on a nice stable surface, a good work table or a counter. Generally, I recommend that you stand when using a die cutter. So you want to make sure that whatever surface you have it on, it's easy for you to access, that it's at a good height for you. I tend to like to use, kind of like a kitchen table height that I'm standing over if I'm using a manual cutter. But you'll find what's most comfortable for you. Watch your fingers. Those blades can be sharp. You don't want to press down on that rubber because you can cut yourself pretty easily. Both digital and manual are using blades, so we want to be careful about that. We want to keep our fingers out of the area where cutting can happen. So in a manual cutter where you have like a lever, you want to make sure that there are no fingers in there because you can actually crush your fingers or pinch your fingers. In the case of a digital cutter, you don't want to put your fingers in there because that blade moves very quickly and in all directions, and you can accidentally get hurt. So you just want to be very careful. It is a blade, and you can get injured using this machine. So you also want to regularly clean up any paper scraps, any bits of fiber, any dust. You can use a paintbrush to do that, or you can just blow it out with a little fan or some canned air. But leaving any of that in there will not only kind of make your cut harder to make, it'll make the lever or gears harder to use. And eventually over time, it'll build up and damage the machine and the die cuts. So the dies. So make sure that you keep everything clean. And like I said, just a little paintbrush to get any fibers off before and after you're, before you use it and after you're done. Never try to cut too much at once. It is absolutely something that we all do. It's like, how many pieces of paper can I get in there? How many of these things can I cut all at once? And it's a real temptation to put like a bunch of pieces of paper in there. The truth is, that's a really good way to damage your cutter. And it's a really good way to get pretty crappy cuts, to be honest. So, you'll find with certain thinner materials, you can do 2 or 3 sheets at a time of like thinner paper. But generally, do one piece at a time, get a good cut, and just keep on cranking through. These do save a lot of time, but don't push it. Only use the materials that your specific cutter is designed for. Not all cutters can cut all things. And some do better with thinner materials versus some of the modern digital cutters can cut things like balsa wood and metal and cork, but a lot of them, the older machines can't do that. So just make sure that you check first and that you're cutting appropriate materials. Otherwise, again, you can damage your machine, you're not going to get a good cut, and you can injure yourself. And lastly, don't use any dull or damaged dies or blades. When they get worn out, wrap them in newspaper and use some masking tape to secure it, throw them out. A dull blade is a really good way to damage your machine, and it's just not going to work very well. So time to move on when they start getting dull. But you'll find that dies will last many, many cuts. Blades on digital cutters will last for a good long time. So you get a lot of cuts for your dollar there. All right. So the first group we're going to kind of talk about is the classic craft die cutter. Now, we have an older model Sizzix here. There are a couple different brands, but Sizzix is one of the most popular. There are fancier ones out there now, like the Big Shot that has kind of a cranking motion, but they all work basically the same. You have your dies that you're going to put on your platform. You're going to, in this case, the older ones use a lever. The newer ones use kind of a cranking motion. But they're very simple. They're easy to use. They're lightweight. They're very portable. You don't have to rely on any kind of electricity or anything. They're completely mechanical devices. They last forever. And I will tell you, if you can go to a thrift store or a yard sale and find one of these old Sizzix machines, they're still going. And they will use pretty much any of the dies that are on the market today. With the right, you might have to adapt it with an extra plate and things like that. And you can read up on how to do that. There are lots of YouTube videos on that. But they're still perfectly functional machines. And we have one of these in the Makerspace and a lot of dies. We've got to have at least 100 different dies in the Makerspace that you can use. And this will cut paper. It'll cut thin rubber. It'll cut felt very nicely. We use it a lot for our story times, for our felt board. Cut fabric. It'll cut like craft foam. And it can even cut sheet magnet with some of the newer dies. So it does have to have dies though. And this is the thing about the manual die cutters, is that each die does like basically one design or maybe a couple different designs, as you can see. And we have all kinds of different sizes. You can also see it's kind of limited in the size of the material that you can cut. Okay, you can't cut like a whole sheet of paper with one of these. You can cut basically something the size of like a greeting card. So that is somewhat limiting, but they're great because they're portable. I can actually pack this cutter and all of our dies into one bin and take it with me for projects and for scrapbooking and for kids' classes. And that's the other thing I like about it. It's fairly safe for kids to use. They understand how to use it, and it's lightweight. It's not hard for them to use. All right. Now, next step up, we do have 2 of these heavy-duty Ellison style cutters. These are usually seen in like schools and libraries and things like that, where you're going to be doing a lot of cutting. They're metal, they're heavy-duty, they're meant to last forever, and they keep going. They are much heavier, though. It is not what I would call a portable machine. You do not want to be lugging this around. And the same goes for their dies. Their dies are larger. The blades are sharper. They tend to have like a wooden base. They're heavier. They're just a heavier duty machine all around. But that's really nice because it keeps going. And this is one of those machines where, yeah, you can layer in 3 or 4 sheets of construction paper and cut them, no problem. And so it's really great for that. Teachers love these when they're doing bulletin boards or class displays or things like that. Great for cutting felt. So you could do construction paper like a champ, magnets, static cling vinyl, shrink film plastic, even a lot of like if you have plastic from like takeout containers, you can usually cut that in here. So it gives you a lot of variety because it's a really strong machine. And you can see basically it's got that hand crank again. It's got, sometimes you need an adapter depending on what die you're using. You've got your paper and your die. So same basic manual setup, just a heavier duty machine. That we have 2 of these, one for smaller format stuff and one for very large, I think up to 8.5 by 11 cuts that you can do. Those are both in the Makerspace for use because, as I said, they're not particularly portable. All right, and then that comes to our digital cutters. There are machines like the Cricut Maker and Silhouette Cameo out there right now. I think Cameo's on its 4th. There are some other brands. I think Brother has one. And basically the idea here is that you design your file on a computer using basically a computer-aided design software, 2D computer-aided design software. And you send that file to the machine. And as you can see, it has a blade here. And nowadays, a lot of them have 2 blades, or they have like 1 blade and maybe an extra tool that you can put in there. And it works a little bit like a CNC, if you've ever seen that, where this blade will move back and forth and the paper will, so the blade moves back and forth on the X axis. And obviously your paper or material that you're cutting moves along the y-axis, and that gives you basically, it can cut anywhere over the surface. And you can set the depth of the blade, you can set all kinds of different things about how you cut, so you can tell it to go very fast for quick cuts, very slow for more detailed cuts, and that's what's really neat, is that you can design just about anything. You don't have to have a separate die. You can design whatever you like. And for some reason, part of my slide went away, but what I'm saying basically is that you don't need a die for this. You've got the blade and the computer can figure out the shape, and you can get a lot of detail. Modern machines now, you can cut paper, cardstock. Vinyl is very, very popular with these machines. In fact, they're based on professional vinyl cutting machines. Fabric, nowadays, the newer machines can cut cork, craft foam, metal, balsa wood. And what's really fun is that you can cut a 12-inch, up to 12-inch by 12-inch wide. You can put a roll of vinyl onto one of these machines and cut up to 10 feet long. And I do believe the new Silhouette, the newest Silhouette actually lets you cut up to, I want to say 15 inches, maybe 24 inches. So it's a pretty sizable machine. And of course, this is desirable if you're doing something like decor on a wall and you want kind of a larger shape. So very, very cool machines. All right. So that's kind of a brief overview. I'm going to show you how to do a quick design in the software for the Silhouette, which is what our library uses. That's what we have in the Makerspace. If you want to learn more about die cutting, you can go to thesprucecrafts.com. It has a great section on die cutting. Just type die cutting into the search bar. They have their picks for the best machines for 2020, information on both manual and digital cutters, as well as lots and lots of projects that you can do. All right, let's take a look at the software and the machine. We're going to focus on digital cutters. Okay, so this is the free software for the Silhouette. It's called Silhouette Studio. Okay, I actually have the upgraded edition, but we have the free version available on all the computers in the Makerspace, and you can download it at home. So you can design your files before you even come into the Makerspace and just be ready to go. Save them onto a USB stick, and that will pop right into the Silhouette and you're good to go. So that's a nice thing to know, is that you can do all of your work at home and then just come in and use the Silhouette. So what you have when you start is you can have I have it set to a 12 by 12 right now. And there's a variety of things you can do. A lot of times you'll just use a design from your library or one that you can get in a store. You don't have to design your own. So I have, I've been using this machine quite a long time. So I have quite a lot of different designs, but let's say I'll just grab these leaves here. Okay. And so I'm just going to say, yep, I'm going to double click that. And it puts those leaves onto my background. So this is my workspace. Now, you will notice that each of the pieces that are going to be cut is a separate piece. So one of the first things you're going to want to do often is to group or ungroup your pieces. So I just selected them all, and then you come up to Object and you can group them, and that means that now they're all going to be held together. Okay? You can change the size either by dragging the boxes on the side. You can rotate them if you like, in any way that you want. And basically what this means is wherever you see a line, that's where the blade in the machine is going to cut. So you can, of course, customize these quite a bit if you want. If you ungroup them, you could take out like the circles or anything like that. Over here on the side, there are lots of different options for customizing what you're working on. Most commonly, you're going to use these features to align different pieces or to adjust the scale. So you can come in here and say, I want these to be exactly a specific size. So that's really, really, really convenient when you're working on a project and you know that, say, you need everything to be 4 inches tall. You can use the scale function to set exactly the size. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup my pieces here. Ungroup. And maybe I'll just take this one. I'm going to take this. And you can also group each one separately. So if I want to just kind of group that, and if I want to delete anything, you just hit delete. You can copy, you can paste, same as you would in any other software. So there we go. I just pasted. Control C, Control V. But I'm going to take this design out for now. I'm going to take this design out for now. I just want the one leaf. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and group that back together and say I know that I'm going to want this to be exactly 6 inches tall. I would first off make sure I put that lock button so that both the height and width will change together. Otherwise, I'm going to end up with only one direction changing, which sometimes you want, but not right now. And I'm going to say I want that to be exactly 6 inches tall, and it will size that for me. Okay, and so that gives you a lot of power. Now, one of the other nice features about using a machine like this is that I can use any font that I have on my computer to cut. So I'm going to just come down here and I want to cut the letters fall. Okay, but that's kind of a boring font. So I'm going to select it all, just like I would if I was working in Word, and maybe just find a pretty looking font. And I can, of course, space my characters. I can make it larger or smaller. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and make this quite a bit larger. Right? And one thing I like to do is to space the characters closer together. So as you can see, they overlap and it'll cut as one piece. So that gives you a lot of ability there to really customize what you're doing. And like I said, if you have any font that you enjoy, you can do that. And then once you've done that, I can grab this and now I can resize it the same as I would any other design. So that's really convenient too, because I can just, if I want this to be the exact same size, for example, I come over here to my scale again, and I can say I want fall to be 6 inches tall, right? So it matches my leaf, perhaps. Or maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to make it smaller. But that gives you a lot of, again, a lot of control, a lot of variability. You don't have to have a specific font, you know, and remember, if you're using a manual, when you do that with say letters, you're going to have all 26 letters and cut each individually. Here, I can weld them together. And speaking of, I can come up to modify. And if I weld those, what that means is that, see how it literally combined them all into one piece now? And that's really nice. And now I need to group them because now I have two different pieces. So I'm going to group those. And there we go. So welding just means that you kind of literally combine those pieces, like stick them together so they become one piece. And that's very commonly done. So the software is pretty easy to use. It's pretty intuitive. It takes a little bit of practice if you want to do something more complex. You can import pictures. So like if you have a black and white image, you can import that and trace it. And I might do some more specific videos on the Silhouette, but that's a basic introduction to the software. It's pretty easy to use. There are tons of YouTube videos on how to use it. So you can, like I said, design anything you want at home. And then when you're ready to send it, you're going to first off save it. So I'm going to save my work and I'm just going to save it as fall. There we go. And you come up to send. And what's nice from here is that you can print your design too if you want to kind of check your sizing and stuff before you go and cut. And again, those red lines are where it's going to cut. So you're going to find your machine. I don't have it hooked up at the moment, but I'll show you that in a moment. You're going to tell it what you're going to do because there are a couple different choices. You can score, you can sketch, you can put like markers in there. I'm just going to leave it to cut. You're going to tell it what kind of material you're cutting it out of. And you can see there are a lot of preset options. I'm going to leave it at cardstock because that's what I'm going to cut this out of. And I'm using a ratchet blade for my older style Cameo. The new one is an automatic blade. You don't even have to worry about what depth to set it to. It will automatically figure out all those settings for you. And then if you have any kind of trouble, you can go in there and tweak those settings. But it's gotten to be incredibly easy to use. So why don't I show you the machine actually cutting? Okay, this is our Silhouette Cameo. This is the version that we have in the Makerspace right now. And I have actually saved my file right onto this little thumb drive. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. So that actually goes right into the side of the machine. You can, of course, attach your computer as well if you want to cut your file directly from the computer. For most of your cuts, you're going to need this mat. Okay, so it's sticky on the surface, and your material just sticks right to it. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that to my mat. So I've just attached a piece of cardstock to my mat. Now I'm going to line it up right here and tell the machine to load, which it goes ahead and does. I'm going to touch the USB button here and find my file. And there it is. And so this one just has a little touch screen. It's really easy. You can set all of your settings from here, just letting it know that we're using an auto blade and that we're cutting in cardstock. And that looks good. So that clicking was the machine setting the blade to the right depth for that material. And it does all that automatically for you. And then I'm just going to hit send. And so what it's doing right now is it's reading the electronic file, the digital file, and it's just moving the blade across the paper, cutting into the surface material as it goes. And you can adjust everything about this, how deep it cuts, how fast it cuts, all of those things. But usually I find these days the standard settings that come with it work really well. And so we're literally cutting that 6-inch file that I showed you that I designed before with the leaf and the word fall. So you can see it takes a little time to make a big cut like that. The more intricate the cut, the larger the cut, the longer it takes. And the thicker the material you're using, usually the longer it's going to take to cut that because you have to go more slowly. Almost done. Okay, so the cut is done. In a moment, it will let me unload the mat. So we just hit the unload button. Now, if you wanted to, you could reload and tell it to cut that exact same file a second time, and it will do that. But here I am. I'm just going to lift the scrap off, and we'll take a look. So there are tools that you can use for delicate shapes to help you remove them. But there you go. That's your basic die cut. And as you can see, all these pieces are separate. So I'd need to attach them separately to whatever project I'm working on. You can, if you're working in vinyl, there are ways to adjust so that you can kind of do all of that by and transfer everything at once using a clear transfer sheet. But for most of paper stuff, I'm just going to lay it out and glue it or tape it down. So it's usually not an issue, but let me take off this last piece so you can see what it all looks like together. There you go. So that's our leaf and our word fall. And you could use that to make a really nice scrapbook page or a piece of decor, whatever you want to do. Okay, I hope that helped to demystify die cutting for you and that you've got ideas in your head for things that you can do. Like I said, it's great for all kinds of different crafting, great to make t-shirts, great to make vinyl decor for your car or for your home. I like to use it to cut stencils that out of contact paper I can put on glasses and glassware and then use etching cream over it. So there's just a million different projects that you can do. It's a really versatile tool, especially since we offer so many different varieties of die cutters, everything from your simple lightweight craft cutter up to your digital cutters and electronic cutters. Anyway, this was our last tool time for the year, so I'm so thankful that you've been joining me all summer. We will be coming back in the fall with tool time, and we'll be introducing Tech Corner as well with more things that you can find in the Makerspace and use for your creative projects. All right, my name is Sandy Roberts. I'm the Makerspace coordinator for the Warren County Library System. It's been great working with you this summer, and I will see you again in September. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy.